Mike Birbiglia's 2016 dramedy, Don't Think Twice, shows us the lives of the improv group The Commune, while exploring improv, mortality, and the consequences of our actions. The film stars Birbiglia himself as Miles, the de facto leader and head instructor of The Commune, Keegan-Michael Key as Jack, Miles' top student, Jillian Jacobs as Sam, Jack's girlfriend and host for The Commune, Kate Micucci as Allison, an aspiring children's book author, Tammy Seeger as Lindsay, someone's just kind of there, and Chris Gethard as Bill, who has things just happen to him throughout the whole movie. Despite garnering universal acclaim, the film only received a limited release outside of South by Southwest, which kind of makes sense because not only is Don't Think Twice a major downer, it's also a niche story that personally affected me, and so I want to talk about why I love Don't Think Twice. There is a lot to unpack with this movie, so you're gonna have to excuse the somewhat disjointed nature of this review. In fact, the most exciting thing about the film to me is the strong bridging between improv and film. Birbiglia uses his considerable improv chops and experiences to replicate the feeling of watching an improv show through a traditional film narrative. Even the title, Don't Think Twice, is a nod to higher improv concepts. The film tells you up front that the most important rule in improv is to not think, yet simultaneously shows the cast performing improv complete with callbacks, references, and subtext. The message to the audience is that everything is completely made up on the spot, but we see from these literal improv scenes that the cast actually brings in a lot of baggage into their shows. And without the context of seeing the cast's regular life, the show's audience and the film audience have very different experiences. You know what? Let's come back to this later. For now, I want to discuss the film's most interesting aspect. Don't Think Twice is a herald. You know that guy that Miles mentions at the top of the film?
Like Del Close once said.
Yeah, that guy. Well, basically, he's one of the three people who invented modern improv, specifically what's known as long form. Now, many people will be familiar with short form improv, a series of rapid-fire pun-based games or short scenes with some kind of hook or gimmick.
But the points don't matter. Yep, they don't matter just like the do.
And while I love short form and could go on for hours about it, it's not really what the film is about. Don't Think Twice proudly displays its Chicago influences to the point of the entire film being structured like an improv show with, as previously mentioned, a herald as its primary performance piece. So, what is a herald? Well, a long-form improv is more intended to be like a fully improvised play, rather than just disconnected jokes. And the herald and related herald techniques are one way to achieve that. Heralds have a traditional 3-act play structure, broken up with short interludes referred to as group games, and each act contains 3 scenes that play out chronologically. Birbiglia took this concept and adapted it to a 5-act screenplay with, honestly, pretty damn good success. Don't Think Twice really does feel like watching an improv show, which is really cool. In the opening of our film, we're introduced to our cast, each of whom represent a specific negative improv habit that reflects in their arc. Miles, despite being the leader of the group, is an improv wimp. He constantly second guesses himself in the film, dropping his offers and just kind of being wishy-washy. His story arc is coming to terms with his advancing age while continuing to sleep with his 20-year-old students. Jack is incredibly talented, but has a tendency to grandstand, which catches the ire of Miles, who sees Jack as the way he wished he saw himself. Jack letting go of his ego, however well-intentioned, is his arc. Sam is a natural, emotional talent, yet her friendly nature comes across as naivete, as she is a very unsafe performer who is unequipped to handle pushback. And we see this in both the improv shows with her standard ask for of who's had a particularly bad day, and when she takes over Miles' beginner class. Sam feels in over her head, and she has to come to terms with losing the biggest part of her. Bill is a no-show, a representative of his own commitment issues. Unlike Miles, who is more of a pushover, Bill instead remains commenty and monotone. He feels he has wasted his life and is too far gone to bring it back, and he must come to terms with his own mortality in the wake of his father's accident. Allison is an improv mouse, barely present despite being incredibly talented and creative. Her arc is overcoming her self-doubt to finish her book. Lindsay is an improv quitter. We see her constantly allow herself to be steamrolled or enter other cast members into the scene for her. Her arc is dealing with the chip on her shoulder from having rich parents instead of being self-sufficient. Neither Allison nor Lindsay's character arcs are really given much screen time, which I think actually does make sense considering the nature of these two characters. Unfortunately, sometimes in improv, we don't actually get satisfying conclusions to every story thread.
Well, yeah, but isn't this a scripted film?
That's true, but every effort has gone into making Don't Think Twice emulate an improv show. The vignette-style story structure, the character painting and scene exploration for emotional moments, even the introduction and conclusions of the film give you the feeling of watching improv. These people we meet are not likable, and Birbiglia created an uphill sympathy battle for himself. But that's kind of what happens in improv. When we have lowered expectations for the cast, that sets them up for their eventual success.
Conveniently, the opening or setup of the film mirrors the introduction part of an improv show. Basically, we not only establish our characters and setting, but draw the audience's attention into our world. Our introductions to the characters are brief, and they're fairly one-dimensional. It's almost as if the characters are being simultaneously explored and discovered. We see the actors literally as themselves in the first few moments, warming up to perform for the show's audience, while the narration introduces improv as a concept to both audiences. It is here that we learn that the film's SNL analog show, Weekend Live, is scouting and will be attending one of the commune's next shows. This is essentially Today's the Day, a herald technique to spur on action. We ask why today is different, and we begin with that action. Now, while that's not really out of place for a traditional 5-act movie, the opening kind of feels like a radar walk, where the montage's purpose is essentially to drop in offers or story threads that we won't touch on yet, but we will see later on in the movie. Then comes our first 2 games. By the way, is anybody else noticing a pattern with the rule of threes? The first group game is the improv shows themselves, and the second is the group riffing on Weekend Live.
Weekend Live was it good ever? Or did we just think so because we were
You should not have said that in your audition. I think that's all.
These scenes aren't meant to further the narrative. They're merely there to demonstrate the closeness of each member, how they not only perform together, but they live and hang out and basically do everything together. Then we get to the new situation, and once again, there's 3.
Oh my god!
First, the theater closing prompts the potential disbanding of the commune. Second, Jack and Sam are presented with an audition opportunity with Weekend Live after impressing the talent scouts. And finally, Bill's dad is in a motorcycle accident, leaving him with severe brain damage. These are some pretty heavy offers to deal with. And even Sam and Jack's audition, which should be a positive thing, isn't really treated as such. And we start to see some of the cracks begin to form within the group itself. Resentment begins to surface, and passive-aggressive jabs turn into more overtly aggressive haymakers. Now, we get to our third group game, the drives. As opposed to the intimate feel of the improv shows, the camera less so a disconnected object and rather an active performer in the show, or the camaraderie of the MST-style Weekend Live couch gag, these car scenes are uncomfortable and give hints that the group maybe isn't as close as we've been led to believe. The seats are all separate and aligned, creating as much distance between the characters as possible. The lighting is really harsh and shot through the windshield, making everybody look noticeably older. Even in the first car scene, Lindsay is immediately upstaged by Jack, who is mugging directly behind her, and we uncomfortably watch her try to join in but be completely steamrolled. These 3 games each show different aspects of the commune: the professionals, the best friends, and the midlife crises. Finally, The straw that breaks the commune's back. Jack nails his audition with Weekend Live being cast right away, while Sam has second thoughts and abandons her audition. This is literally the point of no return. Jack's casting has killed the commune, and Sam's choosing the sinking ship over her relationship with Jack is not matched by the rest of the group who cannot overcome their own egos. Even though Miles has met and is reconnected with an old flame from high school, his feelings of inadequacy are still being challenged, and things become further complicated when the group begins to pressure and exploit Jack to try and get onto Weekend Live. Everything comes to a head at a particularly bad show with Ben Stiller in the audience. Yeah, that Ben Stiller. Here, the connections between the commune and Jack and Sam are officially severed. Things become exacerbated even further when Jack recycles an earlier improvised scene for a Weekend Live sketch, prompting the group and Miles to confront him at the after party.
Oh my god, are you okay?
We come now to the one player who chose the commune over everything else, Sam, doing a solo show.
It's so bad, it's so bad, oh no.
This scene is my favorite, but it's also the most difficult for me to watch because every performer knows the terror of being alone on stage when you need support. Sam finds out that she's trapped in a well and all of her friends are above, standing around uselessly attempting to pull her out. However, Sam doesn't run away this time. From her new perspective, she's not trapped. In fact, she's been down there the entire time. She only now has just realized it. And she's okay with it. In a thank God you're here moment, Jack comes in to save Sam. However, compared to earlier where we see him grandstand, here he is working with Sam and giving her offer after offer to try and work together. Sam doubles down and says goodbye to Jack, to Jack's character, and to her old self-doubt, all at the same time. As for the other members of the commune, well, Miles decides to raise the baby that isn't his, Bill's father dies, Allison finishes her book, and Lindsay gets a job writing for Weekend Live. After Bill's father's funeral, the commune awkwardly says goodbye to each other, but the wounds are still fresh. The epilogue is basically the outro of an improv show, with all of the cast lining up to say goodbye to the audience and reassert the message. It's not about the choices that you make, it's about committing to the ones that you do. And that's what makes good improv that people care about. I could go on further about the film and all of the little improv things that I love, but I think overanalyzing the film would be a disservice, similar to the way that overanalyzing improv is a disservice. So I will leave you with this. Yes, improv is about making stuff up on the spot, but that's only half true. Don't think is a great slogan, but the truth is that a good improviser should always be thinking on stage, not just listening, but being engaged, making strong, educated choices. And Don't Think Twice deals with not the choices, but the consequences. It's like a coming of second age story, as much theater as film, and definitely worth checking out.